Imagine if magic school wasn't a storm of spell casting and monster slaying, but a never-ending nap time supervised by a teacher who wears mismatched pajamas, and that teacher was the laziest magic user you've ever met. They call him the bastard magic instructor, but seriously, even a sloth has more hustle. Late at night, a little boy was reading a comic story about a magician and a demon king, and a blondie was standing next to him listening to the events of the story from him. And after he finished reading it, he admired the character of the magician who stood in front of the demon king and challenged him, and years later he wished to become a magician of justice. Many years later, in the city of Vegeti in the Alzano Empire, which contains an academy for teaching magic by the same name, and one day a girl named Romeo was standing on one of the sidewalks. Then she saw a man with a wound on his finger, so she approached him and asked him to let her heal him. Then she used her ability to heal his wound, and the man expressed his admiration for her abilities. But she asked him not to tell anyone what she had done, since the use of magic outside the academy is forbidden. Then her friend named Sistine approached her, waving happily, and they headed together to the academy. On their way, Sistine wondered why teacher Huey suddenly resigned before the start of the school year, and Romeo told her that a substitute teacher would be teaching them today. In the meantime, a young man was running full speed towards them in a hurry and looked like a mess. As soon as he approached them, Sistine used her wind power to make him fly up and land from the highest height in the fountain. Just when she thought she had overdone it, he came out of the fountain with a goofy, unexplained grin on his face. After he came out, he told them not to walk in crowded places again. Then Romeo asked Sistine to apologize to him for hitting him with her magic power suddenly. And when Sistine and Romeo apologized to him, he got cocky and told them that they were really to blame. Then he approached Romeo and kept examining her figure, body, and hair. Sistine got angry and attacked him again and made him fall into the fountain again, then took Romeo and left the place immediately. At that time, one of the academy's teachers, Harry, was in the principal's office, angry that the substitute teacher was late on his first day of work and objecting to the idea of a man of unknown origin being given a teaching position at the academy. Meanwhile, Sistine and Romeo were sitting in class with the rest of the students. Sistine was surprised that the new teacher was more than half an hour late for class. When the teacher entered the classroom door, they were surprised that he was the young man they had met outside, but he gave them a clumsy look and told her that she had mistaken him for someone else. The teacher then introduced himself to the students that his name was Glenn Ritas and that he was the substitute teacher who would be supervising their class. As he began to ramble on about his hobbies and special skills, Sistine interrupted him and asked him to start explaining the lesson quickly. At that time, the headmaster of the academy was reading Glenn's file and told Harry that he joined the teaching staff on the recommendation of senior professors of magic. Despite the fact that he is a scumbag, his magical ability and memory are mediocre, and he is classified as a third-rate wizard. Harry was outraged that the academy would approve a third-rate teacher and doubted his ability to teach the gifted students enrolled in the academy, and that he would use the self-study method to get them to slack off. Just then, Glenn grabbed chalk and wrote on the board that they would be self-studying in this class, then sat at his desk and fell asleep like a pig. Sistine was furious and threw her book at him. Harry almost lost his temper after the headmaster told him that Glenn didn't even have a teaching license despite being recommended by the teachers, and that he had been a student at the academy until the age of 15. Harry told him his impression of Glenn was that he was a mindless wizard who couldn't be trusted, and that the teacher who recommended him couldn't be trusted. Harry was then interrupted by a blonde girl named Celica, and Harry was surprised by her presence. Then she approached him and told him that she would not allow him to speak badly about Glenn in front of her, and threatened him to retract his words before she used her power on him. So Harry rushed out while apologizing to her for what he had said. After Harry came out, the headmaster told her that his reaction was normal since the academy had entrusted a position of study to a magician with no accomplishments. Celica told him that she would take responsibility for everything he did inside the academy, and the headmaster asked her about her connection to him to take responsibility for him, and she said that she just wanted him to live a full life. At that time, Glenn was explaining the lesson against his will after Sistine beat him up, and the students marveled that they had never seen someone so idle before, and Sistine couldn't read a letter of his writing because of his bad handwriting and felt it was illogical for someone like him to teach them. Then one of the students asked him to translate one of the spells he had written into their regular language, and was surprised when he told her that he didn't know the answer either and asked her to look it up. Sistine told him that what he had just said was unbecoming of a teacher, and that if he didn't know the answer, it was his duty to look it up and bring it to her in the next class. Glenn wondered if it would be faster for the student to look up the answer herself, or if they hadn't learned how to look it up in the dictionary. When he heard the bell ring, he immediately left the classroom without finishing his speech, leaving the students in a daze. After the students went to the locker room, Sistine was feeling very provoked by Glenn's behavior and that he was an unmotivated teacher. So Romeo told her that he would supervise their next class in the chemistry lab, and suddenly Glenn burst into the girls' locker room, thinking it was the principal's room. When he realized where he was, he closed his eyes and tried to justify the situation quickly before the girls beat him up, telling them that it was unfair that he was beaten for an accidental glimpse of naked girls. Then he looked at them deliberately so that he would not feel frustrated when they attacked him. Then the girls kicked him out of the room after they beat him up. After a while, Sistine sat looking at the sky and feeling frustrated after her chemistry class was canceled. Romeo approached and sat next to her after she brought lunch and asked her if her desire to study had anything to do with her promise to her grandfather to discover the secret of the sky fortress Melgalius. Their conversation was interrupted when Glenn brought his lunch and joined them at the same table. Sistine was still feeling irritated as she watched him eat indifferently in front of them and preferred to eat in silence, while Romeo chatted with him about the food and then asked her if what she was eating had anything to do with her grandfather's promise to find out the secret of the Sky Castle. Sistine embarrassed him in front of everyone and said that she doesn't eat much so that she doesn't fall asleep in the afternoon classes, but she doesn't mind eating more since the next class will be with him. Glenn asked her to speak directly if she wanted to say something. When Sistine got up from her seat and started to speak, she was surprised when Glenn fed her one of his foods and asked her if she wanted to try some of his food. Sistine felt shy and nervous, and just as she was about to correct him, Glenn interrupted her and took a piece of her plate. She felt angry at his behavior and asked him if he really considered himself a teacher, and Glenn told her that he was a temporary teacher. At that time, Celica was sitting on a rooftop, remembering the day she offered Glenn to become a temporary teacher at the Zano Magic Academy until they got a new one. Glenn refused because he didn't think he was qualified to teach anyone. She told him he had no right to refuse and threatened to torture him with her magical powers if he ever thought of refusing again. Glenn knelt in front of her and begged her to reconsider his temporary teaching position. Celica used her flame power and Glenn barely managed to dodge her thunderous attack. Glenn's second period began, and he told the students to self-study again. He slept at his desk for the entire class, until Sistine got up and told him in front of everyone that she belonged to the noble magical family of Fable, and that she could get him fired if she asked her father to do so. Glenn took notice of what she said and approached her and begged her to tell her father to expel him from the academy. He felt happy that he could resign from the position imposed on him while Sistine was stunned, so she took off her glove and threw it at him, announcing her challenge to a magical duel. Romeo was surprised and asked her to apologize to him and retract his challenge, while the rest of the students were excited. Glenn asked her what she wanted, and she asked him to improve his behavior towards them and feel responsible like other teachers. And he told her that if he won, she would have to fulfill his request no matter what. When Glenn looked at her, he remembered a woman he had known in the past with the same physical characteristics as Sistine, picked up her glove from the floor, and told her he accepted the challenge. In the evening after class, Glenn stood in the academy courtyard in front of Sistine as the class watched. Glenn told her the rules of their duel, that the only spell allowed to be used was a shockwave, and Sistine agreed to his request. The students thought that Glenn was making light of it, but one of the students told them that the spell is universal, can be used in any situation, and is considered one of the primitive basics that magicians learn, and the fight will be decided by the opponent who can reduce the recitation of the spell to a single line and say it quickly. Sistine felt a little nervous, but she tried to encourage herself not to back down and not let him roam free to do whatever he wanted. She then attacked him with the spell, and to everyone's surprise, she hit him with the shockwave easily without Glenn trying to dodge it, and managed to defeat him in less than 5 seconds. She wondered if she had misunderstood the rules, but Glenn got up again and said he would let her win the first round since it was a 3-round fight, and when he went to attack her with the same power, Sistine stunned him again before he finished chanting the spell, so he went back on his word and told her it would be a 5-round fight. Then he tried to distract her to buy time to recite the spell, but she managed to stun him again and wondered that he couldn't recite the spell in 1 sentence. He told her that reducing the hymn was a heresy and denied that he was saying that because he couldn't reduce it. She told him that she had won the fight anyway, and he would have to honor their agreement. Glenn denied that he had promised her anything, and she and Romeo were surprised that he had broken his promise. He then told her that he would let her go and consider it a close win, but she would not be able to beat him next time, and left the arena amidst everyone's amazement and Sistine's frustration and anger at the same time. A few days later, Sistine expressed her dissatisfaction with Glenn for reneging on their agreement to fight, and that he continued to practice the same lazy and unmotivated behavior. When student Lin approached him to ask him about the translation of the spell, Sistine approached her and asked her not to ask him anything about magic because he does not know anything about the greatness and value of magic, and suggested that she explain to her what she could not understand. Glenn nonchalantly asked her if magic was really that valuable. Sistine turned to him sarcastically and said that magic is basically the study of the principles of the world. It reveals the origin and composition of the world and the laws that govern it, and it also answers the question of why humans exist in this world. He wondered how the study of the principles of the world could be useful to them, and what benefit would come to humanity from magic in general, when there are other fields that benefit humans, such as medicine, engineering, and agriculture. Sistine was furious, but she tried to control herself and told him that magic is not a low-level field about benefiting humanity, and that it aims to search for the truth behind the world and mankind. Glenn approached her and told her that magic is incredibly useful in eliminating humans, and there is nothing superior to it. Sistine felt very angry at his idea about magic and what he was trying to convince them of, so she went towards him and slapped him in front of the students and then quickly left the classroom while crying. After that, Glenn sat alone thinking about why magic is so great. Then he decided to quit his job and go to apologize to Celica and convince her to dismiss his work at the academy, and on his way he saw Romeo inside the lab forming a magic circle on the floor of the room. She explained that she wanted to review how to create magic circles, so he told her that she needed to use mercury. Then he grabbed one of the vials and poured the liquid into it around the circle. Then he asked her to try to activate the circle without shorthand spells, and Romeo was able to activate the circle after Glenn poured the mercury. And when he saw her impressed by the beauty of her form, he told her that anyone can do it, and he remembered himself when he was a child and was fascinated by magical abilities like her. After they left the lab, Romeo asked him if he enjoyed the experience, and he told her that he hated magic. She asked him what he was doing before he became a teacher at the academy, and he replied that he was just a loser and a loner, and that he had been relying on Celica for the past year. When she wanted to know more about his past, he refused to answer. He changed the subject and asked her why they were interested in magic and took it seriously. She replied that she wanted to make magic useful to humanity and must repay her debt to the Sorcerer of Justice who saved her 3 years ago when some evil wizards caught her and almost ended her life, and he inspired her to learn magic. Glenn almost asked her something, but he relented and continued on his way. Before saying goodbye, she asked him to apologize to Sistine for what he said today because she feels a bond with her late grandfather through magic. Meanwhile, Sistine was in her room at home, feeling sad and remembering her last moments with her grandfather before his death, and that he wanted to enter the Sky Castle before his death, and vowed that she would become a witch and be able to achieve what her grandfather failed to do. The next day, they surprised all the students, including Sistine Baglin, as he bowed before her to apologize for what he had sowed yesterday about magic, and that he had exaggerated his words even though he still hated magic. And before the class started, he told all the students that they were stupid because he noticed that they did not know anything about magic before they joined the academy. One student made fun of him because he was a third-rate wizard who couldn't master a simple spell like Shockwave. So Glenn decided to explain the ability and recited the spell in front of them without shorthand, then wrote it on the board and asked them what would happen if they recited it in 4 parts instead of 3. Then he told them that the spell would turn to the right in its direction and proved it to them practically by reciting it in 4 parts, and they were surprised that the lightning strike did indeed turn. Then he continued to explain the spell to them while showing them practically what happens when they recite it in more than 1 part, and told them that they should be able to use it in different forms so that they can claim to have mastered it. Then he told them that magic is nothing but the investigation of the human mind and an advanced form of self-suggestion. Then he turned to Sistine and told her that he fell in love with her at first sight, and her face turned red with shame. Then Glenn addressed the students, proving to them that words have an effect on the mind in one way or another, and Sistine got angry at his use of her as an example in the explanation and hit him in the head with her book. Glenn then went on to explain the spell, and they were all surprised that he could activate it with the simplest of chants. He told them that magic reshapes their subconscious the way they want it to be through phrases, and that reference books alone will not help them to learn magic properly. He told them that he would teach them the basics if they wanted to become true magicians. At that time, Celica was feeling happy in the headmaster's office after he told her that he had succeeded in establishing himself as a teacher at the academy and made his class so popular that other students would stop outside to watch his explanation while Harry was feeling irritated, and Celica told them that he was her student whom she had taught everything from scratch, and she was proud of him now. After the end of the school day, Glenn stood looking up at the sky and thinking about his future as a teacher, and his thoughts were interrupted by Celica expressing her happiness at his status as a teacher and then asking him to give his class extra lessons since the class had been behind since he left. Romeo and Sistine interrupted their conversation by wanting to ask him about something in the curriculum. Glenn was proud of himself and his status as a teacher, but Sistine told him that he was the last person she wanted to ask about anything. In the evening after they got home, Sistine said that his explanation was amazing, but he was still a jerk on a personal level. Romeo asked her about their memories of when they first entered this house, that they couldn't get along at first, but now they were best friends, and that she trusted that Sistine and Glenn would get along in time. At that time, 2 men were standing in an alleyway conspiring to carry out a plan related to the academy, and one of them told the other that he would consider the plan a success at the academy meeting tomorrow. The next day, Glenn was running as fast as he could on his way to the academy due to his usual lateness, but he was surprised when he arrived and found the academy empty of students and teachers, and when he noticed someone in the alleys, he asked him to come out, and that person expressed his admiration for Glenn's intelligence despite being a third-rate magician. When Glenn asked who he was, the person told him that there was no need to tell him who he was because he was going to kill him and take him to the afterlife, and attacked him with his magical power while the students were waiting for his arrival in the classroom. Sistine was thinking about Glenn's recent rise in popularity at the academy, but they were surprised when two mysterious men entered the classroom and told them that they had come instead of Glenn because he was busy. Sistine told them that strangers are not allowed in the academy's classrooms. The person used a magical ability towards her, intending not to hit her, but to silence her. Sistine was surprised that he used military-grade magic. Then he told them that they were looking for Romeo, and Romeo felt scared and remained silent. So the mysterious person wandered among the students and asked them where Romeo was. Sistine interrupted him and asked him what they were going to do with Romeo. He described her as a gossip, and when he was about to attack her again, Romeo revealed herself. So he walked up to her and said that he was about to play a game where he eliminates random people until she reveals herself. When they asked her to go with them, Sistine tried to stop her, but Romeo told her she was sure Glenn would come to save them. He then told them they had gotten rid of him earlier. She asked what they wanted from her, and he told her she shouldn't be alive and called her by her real name, Armiana. Then one of them took Sistine and tied her up in a laboratory, intending to enjoy her before hurting her. She told him that she was the daughter of a noble family, so he approached her and grabbed her bound hands, and she tried to pretend to be strong, but as soon as he removed her clothes, she begged him to stop. But they were surprised when Glenn entered the lab, and when he found them in this situation, he acted stupidly and apologized to them for breaking into the lab as they were leaving. But Sistine asked him to save her, so he went back to them again and approached them and told the attacker that what he was doing was a crime in itself. He pointed his finger at Glenn with the intention of attacking him. Sistine told him to run away and forget about her, but the assailant told them that it was too late and used the explosion spell to attack him. But he was surprised that it did not harm him, so he repeated his attack several times. And then Glenn took out from his pocket a paper called the Trickster Arcana, which enables Glenn to negate the effect of any magic within the surrounding range, but he realized that he would not be able to use the magic either. The aggressor wondered if he could fight without his magical abilities, so Glenn went towards him and punched him hard, so the aggressor rushed towards him to attack him, but Glenn beat him until he fell to the ground without moving amid Sistine's surprise. Then the aggressor asked him if he had defeated his colleague Karel as well, and he told him that he had tied him up naked in the middle of the city. The trespasser was surprised that someone like him could defeat them with just a fist fight without using magic. So Glenn told him that he could eliminate him with legendary magic if he hates losing without magic. Then he jumped towards him and pretended to punch him with the magic fist, but he kicked him in the air and told Sistine that deception is what makes his fist magical. After Glenn defeats the trespasser, he ties him up and interrogates him. Sistine tells him that his colleague took Romeo. Glenn notices a mark on his shoulder, then calls Celica through his bracelet and tells her what happened, and that the intruder who broke into the academy is a member of the Divine Wisdom Seekers, a secret society of evil wizards. He then asked her to ask for the support of the Mage Court and start investigating whether the members of the secret society had accomplices among the Academy's professors, because it is not possible that they could have easily penetrated the Academy's magical security. But she told him that what he was asking for was difficult to do. He told her that the students' lives were in danger, but Celica told him that she was just a teacher now and didn't have the authority to carry out his request. He asked her to hurry up and come to them, and Celica thought that the intruders might have destroyed the Academy's teleportation circuit, and asked him not to die until she came. Sistine was worried about Romeo and decided to go to save her without waiting for help, but Glenn stopped her and told her that going would put her life in danger. Sistine was frustrated and said that he was right about magic not being useful, and that Romeo could die because of it. Glenn tried to encourage her with some words and told her that Romeo wanted to understand magic more to make it useful for others, and that he would not let her die, and would save her from those who were trying to kidnap her. But their conversation was interrupted by the intruder's hysterical laughter and calling Glenn an evil soul snatcher like them. The intruder told them that this is the summoning magic of their leader Rick. Then the skeletons approached them, and the intruder was surprised that one of the skeletons approached him and then finished him off with a single sword strike. Sistine reinforced his fists with her magic, and Glenn punched the Hulk again, only to smash its head this time, and then they escaped out of the lab. He asked her to implement the storm ability to spread widely while he disrupted them for a while, and threatened her that he would deduct her final grade if she couldn't implement it as he explained it to them. Then Glenn started attacking the structures to buy time for Sistine to activate the ability, and she was trying to visualize Glenn and Romeo in the form of the power they show in front of the enemies to form them into a magic spell in her subconscious, and after she finished preparing it, Glenn moved far enough away from them. Sistine then attacked the structures with the power of the storm, but she was surprised that they were still standing in front of them and did not budge, so Glenn told her that she did well and asked her to continue. Then he took out a red stone from his pocket and began to activate his spell and used black magic to eliminate the structures categorically, then fired an extinction ray at them and destroyed part of the academy along with the structures. To Sistine's surprise, Glenn collapsed after using the spell. His face was pale and he was bleeding from his mouth. He told her it was because he had forced himself to perform a spell that was too much for him. Then he got up again and told her that they had to get away and go somewhere else. But their conversation was interrupted by the leader of the intruders. Impressed that a third-rate mage like him could use an extinction ray and defeat his followers, Glenn looked at him and found cult swords around him and asked Sistine if she had the power to nullify them with the dispel spell. Sistine doubted her ability to do so because she had used up almost all of her energy. When Glenn realized this, he pushed her away and made her fall into the trees, then stood facing the leader alone and told him that he knew he could use the trickster's world spell to undo magic, but he could not undo magic that had already been activated. Then he started attacking Glenn with his swords and managed to severely wound him in the chest. So Glenn tried to think of a way to overcome the commander's magic swords. Then he tried to use one of the spells, but he was surprised that the commander canceled it before he could activate it. The commander laughed at his slow recitation of the spell, and when he activated it instead, Glenn surprised him by using the super light spear ability. But the commander managed to dodge it at the last moment with his swords and admired Glenn's intelligence, and forcing him to choose between two ways to die in a short time. Glenn told him that he was only a temporary magician after all. The commander then attacked him with his swords again, piercing his body as he chanted the dispelling power spell. He told him that he didn't have enough power to activate it, but was surprised when Sistine returned and used the dispelling power to neutralize the sword's effects. Then Glenn picked up one of them and rushed towards the commander. When he tried to activate the swords again, Glenn used his trickster arcana to nullify the magic in the surrounding area and then plunged the sword into the commander's body, defeating him. When Sistine approached him, he was amazed that she was able to understand his intentions in pushing her earlier, and that he thought he was 70% sure she would misunderstand him. As they began to move, Sistine warned him that he would not be able to fight in his condition. Glenn fell in pain, and she held his hand to try to heal his injuries. He then remembered that he wanted to become a wizard of justice and had flashbacks to his past before he lost consciousness. After a while, Glenn woke up and found Sistine sleeping next to him. Celica called him and told him that the teleportation circuits were already closed and that the Academy's magical security barrier was set up to prevent anyone from leaving, and asked where the rest of the intruders were. Glenn stood up and told her that the teleportation circuits were not closed, but that they were being rewritten so that the intruders could escape. He then asked Celica where the nearest teleportation circuit was, and Celica replied that it would take them half a day. He told her that it had already been half a day, then looked at Sistine and thanked her for being by his side and helping him. Meanwhile, Romeo was being held in the Academy Tower and was surprised when Glenn broke into her room and found the orchestrator of everything that had happened so far with her. But the mastermind interrupted him and told him that he had succeeded in his plan and that in 10 minutes, the teleportation circuit would be rewritten. Rumia would be transferred to their organization, and he would let his magical power consume his soul to generate forces of nature and blow up the entire academy. Glenn was surprised when he heard Romia calling Huey and asked him to stop what he was planning to do. Huey told him that he was a human bomb planted inside the academy years ago in preparation for the right time, then gave him the choice of neutralizing the circuit or waiting to activate his ability, reminding him that he would not be able to eliminate him in any case. He took off his gloves, bit himself until he bled out, then used his blood to write on the transition circle to deactivate it, but Hugh told him that he was only able to separate one of the 5 layers of the circle. Glenn repeated the same steps with each layer, but Romy tried to stop him and warned him that he was about to die if he continued to use magic continuously, but he told her that he always wanted to become a justice sorcerer and did not mind dying now and refused to escape or surrender. After he reached the last layer of the circle, he began to cough up blood until he lost his strength and continued to crawl closer to the circle. But he lost consciousness before completing the spell, so Romy approached and took her hand out of the circle's field and used her healing power to heal him and told him that he had succeeded by refusing to surrender. Glenn woke up and felt a surge of strength and realized that Romy was an amplified mage who could boost the power of mages just by touching them, and Glenn was able to finally neutralize the circle and prevent it from traveling and exploding. Huey admitted that he had already lost to them and wondered if he should die following the orders of the organization or disobeying them, so Glenn approached him and told him that he would pay for his sins, then tightened his grip and punched Huey. And after a while, Sistine arrived at their place at the top of the tower and found Huey lying on the ground and Glenn helpless in Romia's hands, and signaled her to shut up so as not to wake Glenn. After a while after the incident, Glenn sat thinking about the fact that Romia is Princess Armiana, who was said to have died of the disease 3 years ago. Celica told him that no one knows about it except her and the principal, then asked him why he decided to remain a teacher at the academy despite rejecting the job beforehand, and when he saw Romia and Sistine waving him down, he told Celica that he decided to see what they were going to accomplish and also intended to waste some time. A few days after the intruder incident, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Guard, Zilius, goes to Queen Alicia's room to talk about her visit to the Zano Academy of Magic and tells her that he will be responsible for her protection for the duration of her stay there. When he was about to tell her about Princess Armiana's presence at the academy, she interrupted him that she already knew about it and thought that after 3 years, Armiana must hate her, but it doesn't matter if she lives a quiet, peaceful life. Then Glenn went to the principal's office and begged him to give him a grant or advance his salary because he is broke and starving. Celica told him that he is reaping what he sowed for negligence and laziness at the beginning of the school year, and Glenn objected to Celica's words. Then the principal interrupted and told him that he could earn a special bonus by entering his class in a magic competition next week and winning, and Glenn thought it sounded like a good idea. At that time, Sistine and Romeo were signing up students for the magic competition, but no one seemed to want to participate because they thought they had no chance of winning. Then Glenn suddenly burst into the classroom and said, feeling confident that he would convince the students to participate. Sistine felt frustrated that he would make them even more unwilling to participate. Then he approached her and took the list and told the students that he would make them win all the matches. Then he started distributing the fight assignments to them and told them that the fights with the highest points in the competition would be participated by Sistine and her classmates Gibble and Cash, and Romeo would be in charge of the mental defense fights. One of the students, Wendy, objected to the way he had assigned her to decipher the symbols. He told her that he had done so because she was clumsy and slow even though she knew the spells and sometimes stuttered, and convinced her that she would be able to earn them a lot of points by reading and deciphering the symbols quickly. Sistine realized that Glenn was watching all the students closely as he had assigned them tasks according to their temperaments and abilities, and that he might have good qualities even though he seemed clumsy and lazy. Sistine then got up and suggested to Glenn to let the best students cover all the events and told him that this is the strategy that all departments rely on every year. Sistine objected to his suggestion and suggested that it would be better for everyone to participate in the competition to enhance their strength and experience, and Glenn felt nervous about rejecting Sistine's idea and supporting Gibble. After he got out of class, he thought that he was finished if the other departments competed with only their best students in all the fights, and in the meantime, he saw from the window some students fighting in the academy yard. He went to them and tried to calm the situation between them, but the teacher Harry appeared in front of them and stood in front of Glenn and asked him if his department was also training for the competition. Harry said confidently that they had no choice but to win as long as he was in charge of them, then asked Glenn and his students to clear the arena for his students. He then asked Glenn if he really intended to have all the students in his department participate in the competition and described his students as a hindrance to the other departments due to their low level. So Glenn warned him not to underestimate his students so that they would not be surprised by defeat. Then he challenged Harry that he would bet 3 months' salary on his students' victory, but he realized in his heart that he had gone too far in his bet and that it might lead to his doom. While Harry found the challenge appropriate and also bet 3 months' salary on the victory of his department's students. Glenn thought about begging to withdraw his bet, but Sistine interrupted their conversation and told Harry that he had no right to claim a training area and warned him that if he persisted in his behavior, she would take it up with the academy leaders and they would do their best to win the competition. Harry took his students and left the arena, vowing to make them regret antagonizing him. Sistine motivated her classmates to win the competition, and Glenn spent the days training his students, teaching them abilities and spells, doing research, and reviewing books. On the evening before the competition, Romeo sat in her room and pulled a necklace out of her pocket. As soon as she touched it, she remembered scenes from her past when she stood among the corpses and the Wizard of Justice approached her and calmed her down, telling her that he was by her side and would protect her. Her thoughts were interrupted when Sistine came in and told her that dinner was ready and asked her what she was hiding behind her back. Romeo changed the subject and said that the competition would start tomorrow and they had to do their best in the Queen's presence. The next day, Queen Alicia was on her way to Alzano, and her maid noticed that she seemed to be in a good mood because she was going to see her daughter Armiana, and she gave the Queen a new necklace with blue lobes to wear. After the Queen arrived at the Empire, she announced the start of the magic competition amidst applause, and Glenn felt his applause echoing in his stomach from hunger. While Romeo noticed that her real mother was not wearing her necklace with their picture together and felt a little disappointed. Glenn's students managed to place third in the first match, and the rest of the students were excited that they would place high if they followed Glenn's instructions, but they were interrupted by a student from Harry's class named Craze, who told them that they were lucky enough to place third. Harry joined in and sarcastically said it would be a good memory for them, while Glenn's students told him that they would win and not let his students beat them, while Glenn was a little confused and worried about it. Meanwhile, Celica was enjoying her time, watching the fight next to Alicia, and asked her if Glenn was really impressive. She said he was just an ordinary guy, but he always manages to do something unexpected. Meanwhile, backstage, a guard was whispering something in Zelio's ear. After that, the students of Glenn's department continued to do well in the rest of the fights, and Glenn was impressed that they were doing better than he expected, and he could guarantee his bonus at this rate until they reached the mental defense fight, and a student from one of the departments named Gale warned Romeo to withdraw because he would not tolerate her, and she told him that she would try to achieve high scores like the rest of her classmates in the department and make her department rank second. Meanwhile, Glenn and Sistine were watching the situation from the cheerleading arena and were joined by Gebel, who objected to Romia's participation in the mental defense match and accused Glenn of using her as a scapegoat, but Glenn told him that she would do well thanks to her emotional stability. After the fight began, Count Zest stood in front of the students as the referee and told them that he would start the round with the sound of sleep and use his ability on them. Then the students cast spells to counteract his hypnotic ability, and Romeo was able to advance to the next round. Then the second round of the bout began, and Zest used his mind-bending ability, and one of the students was unable to withstand it and was eliminated from the bout. Then they moved on to the mind-bending spell, and Romeo was able to hold on and qualify until she reached the end of the bout, and only she and Gale, the previous year's champion, remained in the bout. Count Zest decided to use the mind-breaking ability, which is one of the most dangerous spells and causes unconsciousness, and after he used the spell, he was surprised that they were able to withstand its effect, so Gale expressed his admiration for Romeo's endurance and asked her why she refused to quit. She replied that she couldn't afford to lose and that Glenn had told her that they would all win together, and that they were fighting for the same goal. He called Glenn a foolish teacher and asked her if he was in charge of her department, and she told him that he was a fun teacher. Zest decided to increase the power of his spell to decide the fight. As soon as he mastered it, Romeo fell to her knees. When he asked her if she wanted to give up, she almost said that she would hold on and continue the fight, but Glenn interrupted her and announced their withdrawal from the fight. Romeo was surprised by his decision and wanted to continue the fight, but he grabbed her and told her that she did well, but she faced the wrong opponent and did not expect such a strong opponent. Then Sistine joined them and told her that she did not need to continue the fight if she was in pain. Rumia said that she enjoyed the fight and felt that she could fight for everyone. Then the announcer went to Gale to interview him to celebrate his victory, but they were shocked that he was standing unconscious, which means that Rumia is the winner of the mental defense fight even though she withdrew after she managed to pass the test. After the announcer announced that Romeo had won the fight, Sistine hugged her and celebrated the victory with her. Meanwhile, Alicia was happy to see Romeo smile and that she has great friends, so Celica suggested to her to let her meet her, but Alicia told her that the fact that she abandoned her will not change no matter what. At that time, Glenn was standing among his students celebrating their victory, and from afar, a young man and a girl stood looking at them with anticipation. After Glenn's division was in second place, they continued to fight more fights, and Glenn's face looked tired during the competition. And when the young man and girl named Albert and Rel recognized him, Rel wanted to go to meet him, but Albert stopped her and told her that they would carry out their mission to monitor the Imperial Guard first, as they had received a report about suspicious activities within the ranks of the Guard. After that, the students took a lunch break before the competition resumed. Glenn was starving due to his bankruptcy, while the students were enjoying their meals. As he was walking in the park, Lynn approached him to ask him to trade fights with someone else, and he asked her which fight she would like to participate in, to which she replied that she likes transformation magic. He told her that the competition is just a festival, and it's fine as long as everyone is having fun. And then he began a quick review of the self-delusion spell with her. He told her that she could transform into anything she wanted, and if she was having trouble with the spell, it was because she didn't have a fixed image in her mind. He asked her what she wanted to transform into, and she replied that she wanted to transform into the time angel Latilica. He told her to use a code book and try her hardest, and no one would blame her if she lost. After Lynn left, Sistine, thinking it was her friend Romeo, approached him and asked to have lunch with her. When he saw the food right in front of him, he tried desperately to stop himself from tricking her into eating it. But he took the food from Sistine and convinced himself that he wouldn't eat it all. He pretended to be surprised that there were two versions of himself, while Sistine used a spell to undo the transformation and reveal his original identity. When she realized it was Glenn, she attacked him before he could leave. After that, Glenn flew until he fell into the trees after Sistine's attack. Then he sat on one of the couches, thinking only about food, until Romeo came to him carrying some food, and as soon as Glenn saw it, his eyes shone with happiness like a cat, and he continued to eat the sandwiches greedily. Then he asked her if she made the food, and she told him that she was not a good cook, but she would keep the identity of the person who made it a secret at the request of the owner, because she had a fight with the man she was going to give it to and lost her chance, and she was about to throw the food away, but Romeo preferred not to waste it. Glenn felt frustrated that he was replacing the garbage can after the food became worthless to them, but he kept eating until the food was finished and thanked Romeo for sharing it with him. Then their conversation was interrupted by Queen Alicia asking to speak to him in private. Glenn didn't realize that the queen was talking to him, so he replied that he would be busy after he finished his lunch, but he and Romeo were surprised to see her up close. Meanwhile, Celes was looking for her after he noticed her disappearance and asked one of the guards to find her. Meanwhile, Celica was talking sarcastically about how the Imperial guards were worried about the queen after she managed to hide her with magic. Then Eleanor, the queen's maid, approached her and asked her to discuss some matters in Alicia's absence, then whispered in her ear that she had placed an activated cursed necklace around the queen's neck to sacrifice her life for the mission of the Divine Wisdom Seekers, and Celica was surprised that Eleanor is a member of the organization. Meanwhile, Glenn was kneeling on one knee in front of Alicia, and she asked him to raise his head because she wanted to apologize to him for being disgracefully expelled from the Mage Corps after dedicating his life to the Empire. He felt embarrassed and told her that he quit on his own because he hated the job and called himself a failure, and asked her not to bow her head to someone like him. Then he asked her why she came to them without servants or guards. Alicia looked at Romea and called her by her real name, Ermiana, then approached her and asked her how her life was going with the Vibble family, but Romea pretended to be someone else and told her that her name was Romea Tingle, and that Ermiana had died a long time ago. Alicia was frustrated by Romea's reaction to her and apologized for putting her in an awkward situation, so she quickly left in front of them, and Alicia realized that Ermiana would not accept her as she expected. Then she turned back and asked Glenn to take care of her before she left. After her return, she met Celos on her way, but she was surprised that the guards surrounded her and raised swords at her, and Celos told her that he would guard her for a while. In the meantime, Albert was watching the situation through his special ability and saw the guards taking the queen somewhere, so Rel suggested that they attack them from the front and save the queen. Meanwhile, the students were still competing in the magic competition and making progress, while Glenn was lost in Armiana's past after she was wiped out by her special ability. His thoughts were interrupted by Sistine asking him about Romea because she hadn't come back yet. Glenn told her what happened and told her that she might need some time alone. Then he decided to go looking for her and asked Sistine to take care of the students until his return. Meanwhile, Romea was sitting alone holding the necklace she used to wear to remind her of her mother until Glenn's voice from behind interrupted her thoughts after he saw that the medallion was empty of any pictures. Then he told her that he knew the truth about her and her relationship with Alicia. She said that she knew why her mother, the queen, abandoned her and told him that she was a cursed being and the embodiment of the devil and a danger to the royal family, which made it necessary to get rid of her by them in her opinion. And despite that, she is still angry and cannot forgive Alicia for abandoning her and feels that she will betray the Sistine family who adopted her if she does so. Glenn told her about his own philosophy towards humans, that they are beings who always get hurt and feel regret when they make a decision. He recalled glimpses of his past while talking to Romea and then suggested that she should choose her path based on her true feelings, then asked her what she really wanted to do, and she said she didn't understand her feelings about it. Glenn told her his story, that long ago he was a magician serving in the Imperial Army, and as a result of his work, he saw the queen constantly and noticed that she had not given up her necklace similar to Romea's. She asked him to accompany her when she went to see her. Their conversation was interrupted when the Imperial Guard appeared in front of them, surrounded Romea, raised swords at her, accused her of conspiring to assassinate Queen Alicia, and sentenced her to death for betraying the royal family. Glenn stood facing them in front of Romea and asked them to prove it and told them that she could not be executed without a trial. One of the guards told him that it was an order from the queen directly and warned him that if he did not hand over Romea, he would be executed for treason as well. Romea told them that she would comply with what they wanted from her, and Glenn was surprised by her reaction, but she told him that she wanted to atone for her guilt for betraying the queen and asked the guards to leave Glenn alone. And when Glenn tried to talk to her, one of the guards surprised him with a blow from the hilt of the sword and knocked him unconscious. Then the guards took Romea behind a tree, and one of the guards asked her to close her eyes and stand still so as not to prolong her suffering and die from one blow. So Romea closed her eyes while thinking inside that she always thought that this day would come and they would want to get rid of her, and she thought that the queen came to see her for the last time before ordering her execution. After she opened her eyes and saw him, she asked angrily why he had saved her, and he told her that Sistine would be angry with him if he abandoned her, and that the queen would not get rid of her without a trial. He picked up Romea and used his ability to leap up to the roof of the tunnel to escape from their sight. Then Glenn decided to go to the queen and sneak past the guards to meet her. Then he paused and thought that it wasn't necessary to meet her directly. Then they headed towards an alley, and Glenn called Celica and asked her to do him a favor, but he was surprised by her response that she could not say or do anything. So he asked her why the Imperial Guard was out of control and ordered the queen to execute Romea, and Celica told him while sitting next to the queen surrounded by the guard that he was the only one who could penetrate the situation and asked him to find a way to stand in front of the queen. After he ended his call, he thought that the situation was more than he could handle with the presence of the commander of the guard, Celos. Then he was surprised by the appearance of Albert and Rel in front of them, and upon seeing him, Rel jumped towards Glenn and attacked him with her sword. Glenn and Romea managed to dodge Rel's blow, then she grabbed what was left of her sword firmly embedded in the ground. And when she realized that it was broken, she used her magical ability and summoned her sword again. So Glenn tried to block her with the element of ice, but she avoided all his attacks, and he was surprised that Rel and Albert launched a double attack on him at the same time, but Albert's attack was directed at Rel to prevent her from hurting him. Rumia then asked who they were, and he told her that they were Albert and Rel, his comrades from his days in the Imperial Army. Then Albert approached him and told him that the Imperial Guard was surrounding the Queen and Celica with the aim of getting rid of Princess Armiana. Glenn wondered why the guards were after Romia right now, but Albert told him that he had come up with a plan to infiltrate the guards. Rel said they would attack the guards from the front, but Glenn didn't like the idea, so he told them what Celica had told him and said he would place his bet on her for now. In the meantime, the magic competition was still going on, and the students in Glenn's class were frustrated that they had fallen behind in his absence until Albert and Rel came to them after disguising themselves in official clothes and told them that they were Glenn's friends and at his request, they would take over the leadership of the class until his return as he was busy with an urgent matter. Sistine decided to trust them and asked them to lead the class to victory, and she motivated her classmates to win in Glenn's absence so that he would not become arrogant and humiliate them if they lost. And in the meantime, Harry was thinking that his chances of winning had increased in Glenn's absence, and to ensure that his classmates win the competition, they must win the next round. When the transformation fight began, one of Harry's students named Sita transformed into a huge red dragon and got a high score in front of Lynn, who was terrified of losing, but Albert approached her and tried to encourage her and said the same words that Glenn had said to her earlier. Then Lynn came out to the competition arena and closed her eyes with great concentration and managed to transform into Latilica, the Time Angel, and scored more points than Sita, and Harry was furious that his students lost the fight, and as time passed, the department was able to rank first in the number of total points, and then it was time for the final fight to determine the winning department. Meanwhile, Glenn was running across the rooftops with Romia in his arms, while Celis marveled that the guards couldn't stand up to a single wizard and ordered them to find the princess and finish her off. Meanwhile, the final bout involving Sistine was underway. When it was her turn to decide the result after the two divisions were tied, she stood in front of Heinkel, and the final fight between them began, and Heinkel attacked Sistine with the firewall ability, and she got up again and remembered Albert and Rel's trust in her and the support of her colleagues, and decided to use the Windstorm ability to be able to drive Heinkel out of the ring and declare her the winner of the fight and thus the division's victory in the magic competition this year, and all her colleagues came to her to celebrate the victory. Meanwhile, Glenn and Romia continued to escape from the guards until they were trapped in an alley. While the coronation ceremony for the winners of the magic competition began and Albert and Rel went up to receive their medals and approached the queen, and Celica realized that it was Glenn's plan to break through the guards. Zelos and everyone else were shocked to realize that the people standing in front of the queen were Glenn and Romia themselves after they had broken the spell that turned them into Albert and Rel. Zelos ordered the guards to attack them in front of everyone, but Celica formed a large barrier that prevented the guards from approaching. When Glenn and Romia, Celica, Celos, and the queen were separated from everyone else, Glenn told the queen that Celos was using her name to try to eliminate Romia, and asked her to order them to stop being violent. Celos told them that he would end his own life after all this was over and that the queen, who carries the weight of the empire on her shoulders, must be protected at all costs. Glenn and Romia were surprised when the queen ordered Celos to put the sword to Romia's neck. Romia was shocked by Alicia's harsh words that she hated her and regretted giving birth to her. Then Celos drew his sword towards her, while Glenn wondered at the queen's attitude and Celica's silence. And when he looked at the queen, he suspected that she was doing it against her will. He remembered what Celica had told him, that only he could change this situation, so he asked the queen about the necklace she was wearing and if she wanted to remove it, and Alicia denied her desire to do so. Then Glenn rushed towards her, so Celos attacked him and knocked him down, and when he tried to stab him, he was surprised that Alicia had removed the necklace and threw it away, so Glenn took the opportunity and kicked Celos away from him. Then the necklace shattered in front of his eyes. Glenn realized that the necklace was an activated curse spell that ends with the death of the wearer. When Celos asked why the curse was not activated, Glenn pulled Arcana the Trickster out of his pocket and told him that he had nullified the magic within their borders. Then he asked the queen to stop lying after he revealed the necklace, and Alicia rushed to Romia and hugged her and apologized to her, and when the barrier around them was removed, the guards approached the queen to ensure her safety amidst everyone's amazement. Albert and Rel cornered Eleanor in an alleyway and demanded that she tell them why she was trying to get rid of Princess Armiana. Eleanor used the Akashic Records ability to escape before Rel could attack and capture her. Then they went back to Glenn and told him who was behind what happened. Glenn suspected that there might be more members of the secret organization, so Albert and Rel decided to go back and take action, and Rel told Glenn before she left that they would even the score next time. In the evening, Celica met the queen before she left, and Alicia asked her to take care of her, and that she was satisfied to see Romia thanks her a little. Meanwhile, Romia was telling Glenn what happened between her and her mother, and that she was happy that she was able to open up to her. Then she asked him why he knew she was lying about hating her, and he told her that 3 years ago when she was kidnapped, the queen asked him to help her find her and she was begging him to save her, and she was crying so hard that it was impossible for her to mean what she said before with all those feelings. Then he decided to join the celebration with the rest of the students to celebrate their victory and reward them with some gifts after he got a bonus and 3 months' salary. And he was shocked when he saw them in a drunken state after eating a lot of fermented cakes, and was shocked when the owner of the restaurant brought him the bill and found that it was equal to the value of the bonus and 3 months' salary. A few days later, Glenn is training Sistine in a forest at night. She wonders if they are practicing close-range combat. He tells her that she will enhance her senses of attack and defense in magical fights, and then tells her that he will teach her military magic after she has mastered close combat. When he realized that she was afraid of learning martial arts, he told her that she would need strength to protect Rome if necessary, and that she would not be affected by the dark side of magic. Sistine felt motivated and asked him to keep encouraging her. The next day, on their way to the academy, Sistine and Romeo met Glenn sitting on the edge of the fountain, looking sleepy. They thought he had stayed up all night worrying about Romeo, but he denied it. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden attack from Rel behind them, but Glenn managed to catch her sword at the last moment and wondered if she was trying to kill him. She told him that what she did was a greeting, and that Albert had told her to do that when she met any comrade in arms. Sistine remembered that she was the same girl who led her division in the magic competition with Albert. When they noticed she was wearing the Academy's uniform, Glenn realized that the Empire had appointed her as the official guardian of Rome and had her move into the Academy disguised as a new student. They were surprised when Rel expressed her desire to protect Glenn instead of Romeo, and Glenn told her not to say anything clumsy and not to reveal her true identity to anyone, no matter what. After that, they all headed to the academy, and Glenn introduced Rel to the rest of the class as a new student. When he asked her to introduce herself, she almost revealed her true identity, but Glenn prevented her from continuing talking and kept whispering what she should say to them. When one of the students asked her about the nature of her relationship with Glenn, she shocked them with her answer and made them think that they were in a romantic relationship. When it was Rel's turn, she stood at a distance in front of the training object and used the shockwave ability, but she failed to hit the target several times, and Sistine wondered if she was serving in the Imperial Army at this level. Glenn approached her and asked her if there was something wrong. She asked if she had to use the shock bolt in this training, and he said that this is the only spell that students can use to hit from a distance, but she doesn't have to use it, and military magic is forbidden. She summoned her huge sword with her magical ability and threw at the target with great force and managed to hit it amidst the amazement of her classmates. After that, he realized that she had become the most dangerous person in the department. Then Rel, accompanied by Sistine and Romeo, went to the academy cafeteria for lunch. When her classmates saw her eating, they marveled that a little girl like her could fight with a big sword and have the strength to tear apart a training target. Meanwhile, Glenn was in the library talking to Celica about the military's decision to assign Riel to protect Romeo, and hoped that Riel would learn to adapt to others during her time at the academy. After that, the students went on a field trip under Glenn's supervision to the island of Cineria to take a break from studying and enjoy the beach and the warm sea. And when they arrived at the island's harbor, some of the students stopped at the shop of a salesman who was trying to sell his goods to them. But Glenn asked them to leave him and told him that he had been exposed and there was no need for him to disguise himself. So Albert took off his cloak and told him that he was the real guard to protect and monitor Romeo from a distance, while Riel's presence near her was just a bait. When Glenn asks why he wants to talk to him, Albert tells him to keep an eye on Rel and warns him that they both already know how dangerous she is, while Rel has been accompanying Romeo and Sistine at all times. After that, they took Glenn and his friends on a boat ride. But Glenn suffered from seasickness and couldn't stand on his feet when they got off the boat, so Sistine suggested they go somewhere other than the island, but he insisted on going to the island, and Romeo thought he wanted to get them away from the military magic in the chemistry lab, but Glenn told her that he just wanted to see them in their bathing suits. Afterward, Glenn lay down on the beach to rest while everyone else played and swam near the shore. He noticed that Gibble was sitting alone reading a book, and when he asked him why he was being so strict, Gibble told him that he didn't come with them to play. Sistine, Romeo, and Riel interrupted their conversation and offered to join them to play volleyball. Gable participated in a match with another student against Sistine and Riel, and they played until the evening. In the evening, the boys made plans to sneak into the girls' rooms at night, but Glenn caught them and prevented them from proceeding with their plan, so they decided to attack him so they could sneak into the girls' rooms unhindered and fight outside, while Rel, Sistine, and Romeo watched from their balcony. Rel then told them that she had never seen Glenn having fun before, as he was more sad in the past, which is why she decided to stay close to him and protect him. The other girls then interrupted their conversation to invite them to play inside, and Romeo and Sistine were relieved that Rel had joined the rest of them. After that, Glenn sat on the beach alone, and after a while he noticed Rel, Romeo, and Sistine near him, looking at the stars and meteors, and that was the first time Rel understood the meaning of friendship, and they continued to play in the water together, while Glenn sat leaning against a tree, watching them closely. After a while everyone was asleep, Glenn was surprised to find that Rel was still awake. She approached him and asked him why he had left in the past. He told her that he regretted doing so, and she told him that she didn't know why she was in life without him. He told her that she seemed to enjoy her time with Sistine and Romeo earlier, and she could become a student at the academy and live a normal life. She told him that she lives only for him, and Glenn told her that this is not true and that what her brother wanted was for her to pursue her own happiness. Rel wondered what is wrong with what she thinks and what is wrong with fighting to protect him. Then she rushed away from him after telling him that she hates Sistine and Romeo because they took him from her, and Glenn thought about how things never go the way he wants them to go. The next day, the students started their journey towards the research lab, and Rel was distracted while Sistine and Romeo were talking to her until she stumbled, and when they tried to help her, they were surprised by her reaction and said that she hated them and didn't want them to bother her anymore, and Romeo wondered why she hated being with them, and Glenn told them that she was a little disturbed because he said something that upset her yesterday, and they had nothing to do with it. After everyone arrived at the research lab, they were greeted by the director of the lab, Parks Blumen, and the students took a break in the lab's garden while Rel remained isolated from everyone. Then Parks took them on a tour of the lab and told them that the lab combines chemistry and white magic in its work. Then they went to the research specimen room and saw many plants and animals being researched in experiments to create chimeric animals. Romeo wondered if it was okay for people to manipulate the lives of other creatures. Sistine agreed and thought that maybe if you take it too far, you end up becoming an evil magician. When Romeo told them the history of the research, they were interrupted by Principal Parks, who was impressed by Sistine's historical information. Glenn interrupted and said that the lab's resurrection project involves creating a body through chemistry using the person's genetic code, an astral code, and a transforming aether. Parks said it was the idea of combining clones to create a clone of the person they were a short while ago. Glenn then told them that this research was abandoned long ago as it requires the death of many people to revive one person, which is not allowed. Parks agreed with what Glenn said and told them that in the end, they are human beings who do not have the right to decide who lives and who dies. He then said that he heard rumors that the secret organization stole the research project and successfully implemented it. Sistine then asked, out of curiosity, what they needed to complete the reanimation project, and Parks told her that in addition to the 3 elements, they would need original magic, although the chance of it appearing is very low, so the research requires something that makes the impossible possible. In the evening, Romeo kept watching Rel from afar, as she had been isolated from everyone all day, so Sistine tried to go talk to her and invited her to have lunch with them somewhere near the lab, but she refused and left in front of them. Glenn approached her and told her to stop moping. She shoved his hand and ran away, planting in her mind the idea that Sistine and Romeo had taken Glenn away from her. She kept running until she reached the beach and cried alone. At that time, Glenn told Sistine and Romeo that Rel was just a child, even though she looked the same age as them, and asked them not to get tired of her behavior, and Romeo said that they would not hate Rel for any reason, and Sistine decided to go find her, and he told them that he would do it as her teacher. In the meantime, Rel sat crying until she was surprised by the appearance of her brother standing next to her, while Albert watched them from afar and realized it was a trick of the secret organization, and when he was about to leave, he discovered that someone was following him, and then Eleanor appeared from behind the trees. Albert attacked her, but she dodged his ability and stood on a branch. He told her that he trusted that they were up to something with Romeo and vowed to get rid of all the members of the organization at once. The two then used their abilities to attack each other, burning a large part of the forest around them. Eleanor then summoned evil zombie spirits to attack Albert all at once. He summoned lightning and stunned all the spirits near him, and Eleanor said he was much stronger than she expected. She then used a special ability to regenerate her body and heal her injuries. Albert realized that she was on a different level than the evil mages he had encountered before, and would gain the Empire an important advantage if he could capture her. Meanwhile, Sistine and Romeo were in their room thinking about Rel. Sistine remembered when they went to the beach together and thought that Rel wasn't lying about her love for the idea of becoming their friend, so she decided to go shopping before Glenn and Rel returned. Meanwhile, Rel was surprised by her brother's presence after the organization caused his death in front of her in the past, but he told her that he was still breathing at the time and asked for her help to get rid of his work with the organization and become free by helping him deliver Romeo to the organization in order to carry out their plans and overcome the obstacle of Glenn's protection of her. Rel was surprised by her brother's request and that she would have to stand against Glenn, Sistine, and Romeo. As he was trying to convince her to help him, Glenn rushed towards them and told her to stay away from him, then stood in front of her brother and pulled out the Crook's Arcana from his pocket. He then asked Rel to help him capture her brother, but to his surprise, she stabbed him in the back with her sword, and when he turned to her, she said goodbye before ripping the sword out of his body, leaving him bleeding badly and saying that she would live for her brother from now on. At that time, the fight between Albert and Eleanor continued in the forest, and he was able to see Glenn drowning in his blood in front of Riel and her brother. Then Eleanor used her ability to run away, so Albert returned to observe the situation from his magic eye and saw Riel picking up her sword and heading quickly towards the island inn. Sistine returned after buying a large amount of food for Glenn, and when she entered the room, she was shocked to see Romeo lying in her own blood on the floor, with Riel standing in front of her with her sword and stained clothes. Then Riel told her that Romeo was still alive, so she asked her about Glenn as he went to look for her, and she was shocked when Riel told her with a cold face that she had ended his life. Then she said that she is now on the side of the secret organization and will take Romeo with her to them. Sistine became very angry and warned Rel that she would attack her if she moved a single step. Rel stood up and asked her if she would really do that and dared her to attack her as she said. Sistine hesitated and stood helpless in front of her and then imagined a combination of the future if Romeo and Glenn died with her past with them. And when Rel found her helpless to do anything, she picked up Romeo and left the room. Sistine kept justifying to herself that she didn't attack her so as not to cause more damage to Romeo or Rel's death. Then she faced the fact that she was scared and couldn't do anything in the first place. Then Albert entered the room with Glenn on his shoulder. After placing him on the bed, he told her that he was still breathing, but he was on the verge of death and needed healing magic to heal him. Then he asked her to lend him her strength, and Sistine continued to cry hysterically while clinging to Glenn's arm, so he told her that crying alone would not work and would lead to his death in the end. She calmed down and asked Albert what the healing magic required. He told her that they needed to perform a white magic ritual, and he would need to use her spiritual energy along with his to activate it. He then noticed that Glenn had stopped breathing but still had a faint pulse. He then asked Sistine to keep him alive with artificial respiration until they started the ritual. He then took a knife and cut his finger and started writing spells on the floor of the room. Sistine approached him and started giving him oxygen through her mouth. At that time, Romeo woke up and found herself in an unknown place with her hands tied. Then Rel and her brother appeared in front of her, telling her that they need her for their own good, and when she asked about Glenn, she did not realize what her brother said, that Rel had eliminated him. When Romeo asks her why she ended Glenn's life, Rel says that she wouldn't have understood the purpose of her life if she hadn't done it. She then remembers the first time she met Glenn when she was helpless in a snowstorm. Meanwhile, Glenn wakes up in Romeo and Sistine's room and finds Albert sitting waiting for him with Sistine asleep on the edge of his bed. Then Albert told him that he should thank her because without her, the resuscitation magic would not have saved his life thanks to her spiritual energy capacity, which makes them able to rely on her in their fight to save Romeo. And after Albert explained their situation, Glenn felt angry about Rel's betrayal, and Albert told him that he had already warned him about her, and that there are reports about suspicious funding sources for the White Chemistry Research Laboratory and a special relationship between the secret organization and the director of the laboratory, Parks. Glenn wondered why he hadn't told him all this when he met him in the island's harbor, and if he'd been planning to use Romeo as bait all along. He told him he'd never forgive him for that, and asked him not to get her into trouble for their own good. Albert promised him that he would get rid of Rel if she got in their way, and that he regretted following his superior's orders about Romeo. Glenn suggested that they correct the misunderstanding and get her back on their side. Albert wondered if she would listen to him in the presence of her brother, so Glenn decided to try and make her listen, even if by force. Albert told him that he was the one who caused Rel to betray them when he ran away and abandoned his comrades in the past, then punched Glenn hard and said that he would forgive him for disappearing in the past, then gave him a gun and told him that the priority would be to save Romeo, and he would get rid of Rel if he had to. Meanwhile, Romeo was suffering in the organization's bunker, while Park stood enjoying the near completion of his project. He told her that her contribution to this project was an honor, and told her that if she thought the members of the Divine Wisdom Seekers were evil, the royal family was even more evil and corrupt. Meanwhile, Albert and Glenn had arrived at Romeo's location thanks to Albert's spell he had cast on Romeo earlier to be able to locate her at any time, and his casting of another spell on Eleanor during their confrontation. When Eleanor realized the spell and was able to see Glenn and Albert inside their headquarters, Parks decided to send a greeting to them through one of his invented creatures, and then they were surprised by the appearance of a huge four-eyed lion in front of them. So Albert used the flame ability and burned it easily, and Parks was furious when he saw that they managed to get past him. At that time, Sistine was in her room preparing to join them, but Lynn and her roommate entered with worried faces, wondering about Romeo, and Sistine couldn't tell them anything. Expecting trouble, Glenn and Albert made their way forward, until a huge monster appeared in front of them and tried to attack them, so they backed up a bit and Albert formed a barrier around them, while Glenn used his spell to attack the monster and managed to defeat it with a single blow. Parks was surprised at how strong they were against his monsters and wondered who Glenn was and how a mere magic teacher could be so powerful. Eleanor then turned to Rel and her brother and told them that it was time for Rel to take over. In the meantime, Sistine met with her colleagues at the inn and told them what had happened and tried to reassure them that Glenn would take over, but they kept thinking and divided into two teams, one suggesting that they should go and help her instead of standing idly by, while the other suggested that they should rely on Glenn to take over. When Glenn and Albert reached a certain point, they felt that they were close to Romeo's place. Then they found Parks standing in the corridor waiting for them, and he released another monster in front of them. So Albert asked Glenn to go on his way while he took care of him. So Glenn passed the monster and continued on his way, and Albert stood facing it alone. On the other hand, Sistine was trying to reach a satisfactory solution with her colleagues about going to save Romeo and support Glenn. She told them that they would be a burden to him if they went with him and would not be able to help him, and she asked them to trust her opinion and wait for what Glenn would do, and her colleagues finally convinced her. At that time, Rel and her brother were standing in front of the nearly completed project device. Her brother asked her if she would be able to defeat Glenn and Albert for him, and she told him that was her reason for living. Then he asked Rel if she had anything to say to him now that she had endangered Romeo's life. She asked him not to come any closer, and her brother asked her to get rid of him again. Rel summoned her sword, and Glenn asked if she really intended to fight him and warned her that the organization was deceiving her, as her brother has been dead for 2 years, and the dead cannot come back to life. Glenn felt angry and disbelieved everything he said, and Glenn felt he was in trouble because she was not listening to his words. So he decided to confront her since it was the only solution for them. Rel approached him and started attacking him with her sword, and Glenn was dodging her, thinking that everything that happened is his fault for not telling her the truth and running away in the past without her. And he tried to make her listen to him, but Rel continued to attack him, and Romy tried to talk to Rel to stop her from trying to harm him. Then she asked her to remember the moment they spent together on the beach, and that she still considers her and Sistine her friends. Rel paused when she remembered that moment, but her brother asked her if she really loved him, and she said that her brother was everything to her, and that she had decided to live for him. When she was about to attack Glenn again, he took advantage of the distance between them, took out his gun and shot at her, then started trying to provoke her and told her that he wanted to get close to her brother. And when he asked her for his name, she wondered why he was asking her about it now. Glenn offered to back off if she could tell him her brother's name. Riel tried to say his name, but she felt a pain in her head whenever she tried to remember his name, and she was worried when she couldn't remember his name. So her brother told her that the name didn't matter and that it wouldn't change the fact that he was her brother. Glenn took advantage of Rel's moment of inaction and threw the gun at her, making her drop her sword, then rushed at her and pinned her down with his gravity control spell. Her brother got angry and told him to stay away from her, so Glenn took his gun and shot the project device behind him and neutralized its effect on Romeo, then rushed at him and punched him and told him that he had been exposed and that he was Rel's fake brother. Shine remembered that her brother's name was Cheyenne, and Shine began to remember his past with Rel, and that she was one of the victims of the reanimation project where he made a human clone with the help of a guy named Rainer and a girl named Alucia, and decided to name her Rel. But Cheyenne was opposed to completing her project and asked him to leave the organization, but Rainer surprised him and stabbed him with a sharp instrument, and when Alucia tried to escape, Rainer caught her and stabbed her as well. And Rel remembered her truth after she heard what Rainer told Glenn. Rainer then told him that Shine betrayed the organization 2 years ago and reported their activities to the Imperial Army mages. Glenn told him that he was the mage that Shine reported the organization's activities to, and then he remembered Shine's plan to leave the organization and destroy the project. And when Shine asked him to save his friends Rainer and Alucia, Glenn continued that after the interview, he lost contact with him and found him dead when he raided the lab, as well as Alucia, who tried to survive and get out of the lab. So Glenn decided to protect Riel, the girl who inherited Alucia's astral code and her memories. Rainer thought he had modified her memories before he escaped from the lab to suit his needs and called her a piece of junk, and that he didn't need her anymore. Glenn was furious and attacked Rainer with a lightning spear at close range, but he was surprised to find 3 clones of Rel standing in front of him to protect Rainer. Rainer stood up and told him that he could not defeat him in the presence of Rel's clones, as he had removed the emotions from them and turned them into puppets, then ordered them to attack him, so they rushed towards him and started attacking him all at once, while one of them went towards the original Rel to finish her off. Glenn chased after her to stop her from attacking Rel, and managed to push her away before she brought her sword down on Rel's head. She was surprised that he was protecting her after what she had done to him, and that she was just a puppet. He said that he and the rest of her classmates at the academy didn't consider her a puppet, and that she wouldn't have that expression on her face if she was really a puppet. He told her to live for something to cherish and not to use her mind too much. So Rel took her sword and decided to finish off her fake copies. So Rainer was surprised by her reaction and tried to use his magical ability, but Glenn prevented him by Arcana the Trickster, then pointed his gun at his head and asked Romeo to close her eyes so that she would not see Rainer's head shattering from his bullet. Rainer was terrified and begged him not to kill him, but Glenn pulled the trigger. Rainer realized that the gun was empty and that Glenn was playing with it. He told him he wouldn't do that and told him not to touch his students again before giving him one last punch. In the meantime, Albert was torturing the monster in the corridor until he was reduced to a pile of ashes. After Glenn managed to save Romeo and returned with Rel and Albert, they were greeted by Sistine and the rest of the students, and Rel bowed her head in front of Sistine when she turned to her, and Sistine hugged her and started crying. After they all went to the island beach to play volleyball, Glenn and Albert watched them closely, and Albert said said that Sistine looked a lot like Sierra Silvers, so Glenn looked closely at her features as she played with her classmates. Meanwhile, Eleanor was talking to the leader of the organization in an undisclosed location about Romea and the Resurrection Project after Parks failed to complete it, and the leader ordered them to observe the situation quietly for a while. After returning from their trip to Cineria, Rel invited Sistine and Romea to dinner at their family home. Their parents welcomed her with open arms, and Sistine told them that she was a little shy, and then their mother asked them to take care of the house while she and their father went to the capital tomorrow. After they finished dinner, the three of them sat on the balcony, and Rel wanted to apologize for what had happened recently and thank them for accepting her despite that, so they hugged her to reassure her, and Rel told them that she considered them her best friends. The next day, Sistine met Celica in the Academy's library after helping her pick up a book that she had dropped and read the name of the book, which was about the Sky Castle Melgalos, and asked her if her grandfather was a famous scholar, and Sistine said she wanted to fulfill his wish, although she doubted if she would be able to, so Celica encouraged her with some words and told her to try her best before she left. After that, Celica went to one of the rooms inside the library and approached a painting that looks like a map of the library, intending to go to the underground maze, while Sistine met Glenn in the library and wondered why he was in such a place, as the library does not fit his personality. Glenn tells her that he wanted to thank her for saving him from death that day. Sistine blushes as she remembers the moment she helped him with CPR. When Rel and Romea join them, Romea thinks that Glenn made her cry, and Rel gets angry and summons her sword to attack Glenn. Glenn tried to explain to her what happened, but she started attacking him with her sword, and he kept running away from her like a coward until Rel kicked him out of the library, and he was surprised by a carriage that was about to run him over. But the owner of the carriage used his wind power to lift him out of the way of the horses. Then the person got out of his carriage and met Sistine, and she was surprised by his presence, so Glenn asked about his identity, and the person told him that he was the teacher Liam Cletus, who was invited to the academy as a guest teacher, and that he was also Sistine's fiancé, and they were all shocked to hear that Sistine was engaged. Sistine then questioned what Leos had said about their engagement, and he reminded her that they had promised to do so when they were children. Glenn approached him and told him that dating her was like digging his own grave, and Leos asked him not to insult his future wife. Sistine told him that Glenn was joking, and Leos realized that this is the Glenn readers he had heard about, and Glenn was surprised that Leos already knew him. Leos said that he had heard some talk about him at the Cletus Academy where he teaches, and that they consider him a rare type of teacher because of his teaching style. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Mr. Harry was happy to learn that a prestigious teacher like Leos had come to answer the call to replace the Academy's head teacher who was on medical leave. Celica wondered why the Academy would hire a teacher of his stature, and felt it was strange to hire someone like him. Harry asked her if she was worried about Leos stealing the spotlight from her student Glenn. Meanwhile, Leos was expressing his love for Sistine in front of the students in the courtyard, which made her feel embarrassed. Glenn sarcastically told her that Leo's taste in girls was too weird to fall in love with her, and asked her to invite him to their wedding. Sistine was furious and pushed him away with the wind. Afterward, Leos finished explaining his lesson to Glenn's class, and they all applauded him while Rel slept on Sistine's shoulder. Glenn sat behind them and admired the way Leos explained the theory of physical force and helped the students understand it easily, even though it was still too early for them to learn it. Romea turned to him and said that she now realized why he told them to think about the meaning of the Force, to use it and not let it use them, and that they wouldn't make that mistake. Glenn told her that he was just jealous that Leos turned out to be a better teacher than he expected. Then Leos went to Sistine and asked her what she thought of the lesson honestly, since she was famous for making teachers cry in their first class, and when he learned that the lesson was great from her point of view, he felt that he had managed to remove the first obstacle to become a worthy husband for her. Then he asked her to walk outside together to discuss something. And after they left, Romea asked Glenn to do her a favor. After that, Leos and Sistine went to the Academy garden, and he asked her if walking together reminded her of their past, and told her that he believed that their relationship would become longer and more solid. Meanwhile, Glenn, Romea, and Riel were watching them from afar, and Glenn wondered why Romea asked him to eavesdrop on their romantic moment together. Afterward, Leos asked her to marry him, and Glenn was excited to hear his request, while Romea had a bad feeling about it, but Glenn felt that it sounded interesting. On the other hand, Sistine refused Leos' proposal. When he asked her why, she said that she had promised her grandfather that she would one day discover the secret of the Castle of Heaven, and in order to do so, she would have to learn a lot about magic. Leos laughed at her talk, calling it a fantasy, and told her that her grandfather would have achieved a lot of achievements in the history of magic if he had not devoted his life to searching for the past. Then he asked her to support him in his specialty instead, but Sistine refused, saying that she had dreams like his and would not give up on them. He told her that he did not want her to waste her life in vain, and then Glenn appeared from behind the bushes and asked him not to tell lies and told him that everyone walks the path he chooses for himself. Leos told him that he had nothing to do with it, Then he was surprised by Sistine's response that it concerned Glenn as well, because they were lovers and they promised to share their future together. So Glenn was surprised by her claim that they were lovers, and that is why she refused to marry Leos. Then he quickly realized it and continued her lie with Sistine to infuriate Leos even more. Leos refused to believe it, saying there was no way Sistine could fall in love with such a useless person, and vowed to make Glenn regret his hostility. Glenn took off his gloves and threw them at Leos, challenging him to a fight. Leos accepted the challenge, with the time and nature of the fight to be discussed at a later date, and left the room. Afterward, Glenn went to class and told his students what had happened, and that he was thinking of making his relationship with Sistine real so that he could marry a rich girl and live a luxurious life without having to work, and asked them to train hard so that they could compete with Leo's division and beat him, and promised not to forget them when he became very rich. In the evening, he went to meet Albert at the bar. When he told him what happened, Albert called him a lowlife for competing for a girl he didn't love for money, but Glenn didn't care and thought that he wouldn't have to work again if he won. Then he asked Albert why he wanted to talk to him now. He told him that he had received information about smuggling angel dust into the Empire. Glenn was surprised by the news and said that he thought the method of making angel dust had been destroyed last year. Before Glenn could say anything, Albert refused to join the investigation team and asked him not to get involved in the matter, and wondered about the purpose of Sarah's death if that substance was still being used. Glenn said that he did not want that tragedy to be repeated and told him that he really saw Sarah and Sistine and had not forgotten her until now. After Glenn left the bar, he walked the streets at night, remembering his past with Sarah and her admiration for his dream of becoming a justice sorcerer, and that she might one day want to fulfill that dream as well. He almost said that he would protect her, but he backed down. Meanwhile, Leos is sitting in a carriage with a mysterious person who tells him that everything went as planned after Glenn challenged him to a fight and asked him to beat Glenn for him. On the day of the highly anticipated duel between Glenn and Leos, Harry is the supervisor of the duel and tells the students to follow their teacher's instructions, and that the duel will last for 3 hours and will be won by one team taking over the opposing team's side. Harry was furious with Glenn for using the class to compete for a girl, and asked Leos to teach the scumbag a lesson. Then the referee announced the start of the match. After the two teams took their places, Leos attacked Glenn's team and inflicted direct damage, and managed to eliminate 2 students, and Leo's team was using the strategy of dividing themselves into teams of 3. Leos then deployed more students in larger areas to control the fight. All the teachers were watching the fight closely and thought that the fight would end in Leo's favor. The two teams kept exchanging magic attacks, and Glenn's team was able to gain the advantage in close-range combat. The teachers were surprised that Glenn's team was using the strategy of forming small teams of 2, and considered it an insult to the history of the academy. Harry told them that Glenn would use every means at his disposal to win. Meanwhile, Leos told his team to widen the distance and switch to long-range sniping. But part of his team was facing Rel alone, who looked like a monster they couldn't hit with their attacks. So he told them all to move to the forest and decided to use a special forest tactic to defeat Glenn's team in one move. But they were surprised to find Glenn at the entrance to the forest, preventing them from entering and daring them to face him while laughing an evil laugh, and then quickly headed into the forest. The students of Leo's got excited and decided to beat Glenn to win the fight. But when they followed him into the forest, they were surprised to find that he was luring them into his traps and taunting them after he managed to eliminate many of them. And after 3 hours had passed, neither team was able to finish the fight in the allotted time, and Harry announced that the fight ended in a draw. Glenn turned to his team and praised their performance against Leo's, while Leo's was scolding his team for not following his instructions. So Glenn approached him and told him that he was taking the wrong approach with his students, and that the leader was responsible for his team's failure. Leos took off his glove and threw it at Glenn and challenged him to another duel, telling him that he would not give up Sistine until he could convince her to marry him and give up the pursuit of the Sky Castle. Glenn accepted his challenge, but then Sistine interrupted them and said that she was not an object for them to duel for, and chided Glenn for using cheap tricks during the duel. Glenn interrupted her and addressed Leos, telling him that they would fight the next morning in the backyard of the academy in a one-on-one match. Sistine approached him, slapped him, said she hated him, and left quickly. Afterwards, Sistine sat talking to Romeo about Glenn on their way back and wondered how Glenn viewed her as an object that would help him get rich. Romeo said that Glenn couldn't possibly be that kind of person, and that there must be a reason why he was fighting against Leo's. Romeo then thought she'd talk to Glenn and tell him about the bad feelings she had about Leo's, the same feeling she had about Parks. Meanwhile, Albert was with members of the Imperial Army in front of the body of an angel dust addict and told them that this was the 5th case they had received in a short period of time. Leo's was on his way back, annoyed with Glenn that he was only a third-rate magician and could not be a match for him, and vowed to defeat him in order to gain Sistine, give his family full advantage over hers, and secure his position as the future leader of the family. In the evening, Glenn thought that he must defeat Leos no matter what because he had no intention of losing to him. Sistine appeared nearby after she heard him talking to himself and asked him why he had challenged Leos to a duel. He pretended that he did it to get rich and never have to work again, and when he didn't get a response from Sistine, he told her that she looks a lot like Sarah. Then he told her his story in the past about his love for magic and his desire to become a magician of justice, but he was terrified of the reality of blood magic and hated it. But Sarah was the only reason he still held on to his dream until she died in his arms on a mission, and he decided to give up being a magician and became unemployed and isolated in his home. He then told her that he didn't know why he wanted to fight Leos, maybe because she was trying so hard to fulfill her dream, or because he wanted to atone for his guilt to Sarah by protecting her dream, and Sistine realized that he did it because of his own emotions. Then she said that she is nothing in front of her grandfather, and the deeper she goes into magic, the more she feels like she is losing her faith. Then she looked at him and said that someone is supporting her in her dream because of his personal emotions, so she should keep working, and Glenn realized that she looks a lot like Sarah. Leos interrupted their conversation and called Glenn a coward for talking about his past, as if it were a touching story to gain Sistine's sympathy, and that he knew what he had done in the Imperial Army as a researcher of military magic. Glenn warned him to leave the place and not to say another word. Leos told him that he had no right to live his life in the light with his bloody hands. Glenn told him that if he continued to talk about his past, they would not need to wait until tomorrow for the fight. Leos asked him to return to his former position as a member of the Special Forces of the Imperial Mage Army No. 0. Glenn decided to attack him and use Arcana the Trickster to break his magic, but he was surprised that Leos was able to fight in the style of the Imperial Army like him, and Leos knocked him down. Then he was surprised that Leos was able to summon Talpa creatures. Leos summoned swords with wings and kept attacking Glenn with them, and he was unable to block or dodge his attacks, and Arcana the Trickster doesn't work because she uses augmented imagination instead of chanting spells. Then Leos approached him and asked him to be serious about their fight tomorrow, so Glenn got up and left without saying a word, and when Sistine was about to follow him, Leos grabbed her hand and asked to marry her again, telling her that she had no right to refuse and threatened to reveal Romia's true identity to everyone since there are many organizations that want to use her in their experiments. The next day, the news spread among all the students that Sistine had accepted Leos' proposal and that their wedding would take place a week later, with some expressing their displeasure at Glenn's absence from the fight and the academy since then. When Sistine entered the classroom, her classmates asked her about the truth about her marriage to Leos and her dreams of becoming an archaeologist. She replied that it was all just a dream, and then Leos interrupted them by taking her to a meeting about their wedding, to everyone's surprise. After they left, Rel told Romia that she trusted that Leos was their enemy and wanted to join them and get rid of him, but Romia stopped her and said that she had told Glenn everything that happened, and he told her that he would take care of it before he disappeared. A week later, Romia and Riel sat waiting for Sistine outside the room and marveled at the beauty of her wedding dress. When Romia wanted to ask her something, she told them to go to the ballroom until she came to them and sat crying after she let them out of the room. Then the wedding ceremony began and Sistine accepted to marry Leos in front of everyone. Before Leos could kiss her, Glenn stormed into the ceremony hall and objected to their marriage, then threw tear gas at them, grabbed Sistine in his arms, and ran out of the hall. After they were some distance away, Sistine told him that she had to marry Leos. He told her that he knew about his threat to reveal Romeo's identity. She asked him where he had disappeared to all this time, and he told her that he sat down to think of a way to get her back and beat Leos, and decided to lure him to a place where he had the advantage so that he could defeat him. He told her that he thought Leos loved her so much that he would do something foolish like threaten her or force her to marry him. She told him that she realized that he didn't love her at all that day, as he seemed to her a cold and evil person. Then their conversation was interrupted by a group of people under the influence of the angel dust drug with axes and weapons in their hands. Meanwhile, some of them had arrived at the ceremony hall in front of Rel, and when she was about to attack them, she was surprised by Albert and the rest of the wizard army beside her and asked her to help the students escape and leave the place while they took care of the addicts. At that time, Glenn pulled out his gun and stood facing the addicts alone and told Sistine to run away. Sistine refused to run away and decided to defend herself and confront them with him, but she was surprised by the ability of some of them to jump great distances, so Glenn confronted them and attacked them. Then he grabbed Sistine's hand and they kept running through the alleys, and Glenn was thinking all the time that it was Leos who sent them to surround them, and he remembered Sarah's death in similar circumstances and vowed not to happen again, and he continued to attack anyone who got in their way or approached Sistine, and Sistine sat in fear of what was happening around her. After he managed to overcome them, he approached Sistine, but she pushed his hand away and asked him not to touch her. He asked her if she was afraid of him, then he was interrupted by Leos' applause and admired Glenn's abilities. He told Sistine that he was not Leos, but Gaddis Louvain, former number 11 executioner in the Imperial Wizarding Army. When she asked about Leos, he told her that he had given him some drugs to carry out his instructions, but he couldn't take the dose and died. So Glenn asked her to get a safe distance from the place, and Gaddis agreed with him and threatened to kill her if she interfered in his fight against Glenn. After Sistine left, Glenn realized that Gaddis had orchestrated all of this to lure him into a fight and pretend to administer justice so that he could get rid of all the powerful army mages and VIPs of the Empire. Gaddis told him that everything would go according to plan this time, and that once he obtained the Akashic records, the power to rule the foundations of the world, he would control everything and apply his justice to the evil in the world, and would not allow it to defeat him as it had in the past. He then summoned his phantom beings and directed them towards him. Glenn shot and disintegrated them, then hid behind a wall and suddenly appeared to try to shoot Gaddis with a bullet, but he was able to dodge it. Then he used the ice ability to attack Gaddis, but he was able to extinguish it with the flame ability and realized at the last moment that Glenn took advantage of his distraction to hit him with magic sticks before catching them with his fingers, then wounded Glenn in the arm through the phantom creatures and told him that he would make his death quick so that he would not suffer, and asked him to say hello to Sarah. But before he could execute his last move, he was surprised by a gust of wind that blew him away. When Glenn saw Sistine standing in front of him, he told her that she didn't belong in this world and shouldn't be here, and she told him that she came back to take him with her to where they belonged because she couldn't bear to lose him. Gaddis came out from under the rubble, and then Glenn got up and took off his robe and asked her to team up with him and promised to defeat him at all costs to bring her back safely to everyone, and Sistine asked him to promise her that they would return together to everyone. Then they headed toward Gaddis. He got angry and summoned several Talpa, but Glenn and Sistine crushed them with their abilities. When they got close enough, Sistine used the wind to give Glenn a boost. Then Glenn jumped up and punched Gaddis in the face and used Sistine's boost to smash him into the wall. When Gaddis realized how strong they were together and that he had underestimated Sistine, he summoned the incarnation of Lady Justice Justia to finish them in one blow, but he was shocked by the penetration of Sistine's magic into her body, and then Glenn rushed towards him to deliver the last punch and defeat him, and the last punch caused Gaddis to be crucified to the wall pillars before he fell motionless. Then Glenn approached him and Gaddis told him not to get cocky because he was able to defeat him thanks to Sistine. When Glenn turned to her, he found her powerless due to the lack of spiritual energy. He was surprised that Gaddis could still control Justia, and told him that the Empire must be destroyed because it was created with evil intentions before he left, and promised him that he would defeat him next time. After confirming that Gaddis was gone, he carried Sistine on his back to return to the rest.